Seeing the time has arrived, I'm going to open up the Wednesday, April 24th, 2019 Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, the Placer County Airport Land Use Commission, and the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency meeting. We'll start the morning with a flag salute. Would you give us the honor of leading us?
I'd love to.
Okay.
Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if the clerk would be kind enough to call the roll.
Allard.
Here.
Broadway.
Here.
Burris. Here. Clark-Kretz. Here. Holmes.
Here.
Joyner. Here. Mackey.
Here.
Euler.
Here.
Wright. Here.
Okay, thank you. So now, item C, we're going to go into closed session in conference room A, and we'll have a conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation of Government Code Section 54956-9.
If there's any public comments on the closed session, now would be the appropriate time, if there is any.
Oh, is there any public comment on closed session item? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, the board has just returned from closed session and no action was taken. We'll now move to item D, approval of minutes, March 27th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Item E, agenda review, or any changes in the agenda? See none?
No, sir.
This is the time for public comment. This is time for anyone who wants to address the agency board on any item that is not on the agenda. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, but we'll give you all the time you want.
Yeah. Good morning, board. Lee Bastian, Sheridan Municipal Advisory Council. And we were getting a lot of requests from our community to go ahead and do Phase 2B of the Lincoln Bypass because we've been having a lot of accidents between West Weiss and the Bear River Bridge. We even had a fatal here about 6 months ago, even though the Highway Patrol thinks it was suicide by semi. And so we ask that you move up and start working on it sooner than later. Other thing is, I've been having to commute down to 65 in the morning, and the backup now is starting at 12 Bridges at 7:30 in the morning.
Wow.
If you go at 7, you get through quickly, but at 7:30, you're backed up to 12 Bridges, and it's stop and go all the way to I-80.
Wow.
So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lee. Oh,
Just out of curiosity, let's just say hypothetically, there might be a train that ran from somewhere in Lincoln to somewhere in downtown Auburn. Would that solve your Roseville, would that solve your problem for you?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I've been commenting to SACOG to have a rail from Yuba City down to, all the way down.
your daily commute problem would be taken care of by,
Yeah, well, I'm not on a daily commute anymore. I'm retired, so it's just, I've been doing it.
because you would ride it?
Yeah.
good. All right. Thanks, Lee. Any other public comment? All right, I'll close public comment and bring into item G. This is the consent calendar for the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. Any items on consent that need to be removed for discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I'll ask the board to take action.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. We'll now move to item H, consent calendar, Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. Any items on consent that wish to be pulled for discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for action.
Move approval. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item H, the consent calendar for Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none. We'll move to item L, or is it I? Oh, it's I.
Aye.
I'm kind of fuzzy there. This is a public hearing, consideration of appeal of the consistency determination for Verizon cell tower minor use permit modification. I've been informed that this item is to be continued, but if the applicant is here and wishes to make a comment at this time, it's fine. Otherwise, we'll see you. You're okay? All right, so we'll continue the item. Is there a date certain for?
We'll continue it to the next meeting of the Placer County Transportation Agency in ALUC.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to item J, Transportation Funding Outreach Expenditure Plan.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This morning, as we reported in previous meetings, we were going to bring back to you the expenditure plan for the transportation funding outreach process. Just to update you a little bit on the process itself. We are continuing to move forward with the sub-county district legislation, Assembly Bill 1413, in which will be held a public meeting with the Assembly Local Government Committee on May 1st, 2019, so next Wednesday. We have two people that are going to be commenting on that on behalf of the coalition of 12 counties in favor of this legislation, those being former CTC Commissioner Jim Arp and potentially former Roseville Mayor Susan Rohan representing our coalition here in Placer County. At this point will likely be the two people that will speak on behalf of the legislation. That committee has rules that limit those speakers to two. However, there is an opportunity for other organizations to attend and basically do a Me Too process as well. We've also got many letters from organizations here in Placer County, as well as throughout the Sacramento region and really throughout the state have provided support letters for that legislation. So we're very optimistic about that hearing, which will be at 1:30 next Wednesday. Following that, it'll go on to the Assembly floor and then on to the Senate and then hopefully to the governor's desk in the fall. On the transportation outreach program itself, just a quick update that we continue on our outreach process according to the scope of work, which was approved by the board last year. We've completed the polling, and that was presented to the board at the last meeting. We continue our initial outreach approach, which includes the business toolkit, updated websites, virtual reality video, and social media, again, to help inform the public and the voting public on the need for transportation improvements in South Placer County. And there's a number of activities and events that we will be participating in, which are outlined in the staff report. So now to the meat of the item before you today, and that is the proposed expenditure plan. In the last meetings, we've been talking about the outreach strategy. We've been talking about the polling that goes along with our initial assessment. But now what we wanted to do is to have a discussion as we enter into this process about the expenditure plan. And the expenditure plan is roughly the same as what was proposed in 2017, with a couple minor amendments that we would like to get your blessing on to move forward in that process. So this is not the actual formal approval of the expenditure plan prior to it potentially being put on the ballot, but this essentially gives us guidance so that we can move forward with our outreach strategy in a consistent manner. And so we wanted to run this by you, and we've shown this to you kind of in draft form up to this point. So the changes on this sheet, which is attached to the staff report, include an update of large regional projects. So we have moved these projects as directed by the board into final design stages, and in many cases, and Therefore, we have obtained refined and updated costs for those projects, and so we've increased the, as you can see in there, the costs have increased for those projects of regional nature in the first part of the expenditure plan. So that probably is the biggest change to the expenditure plan. And then we have kept a number of things the same. We keep the transit, bike ped, or active transportation component of the plan roughly at the same, set aside at 15%, and that was supported by the polling that we reported to you at the last meeting. We have kept the competitive funding pot the same, and what that is a set aside of 5% in case there are projects that are of county district-wide importance that come along. We have a set aside for those projects that we are not anticipating at this time, so we keep that the same at 5%. Our administrative costs remain unchanged at 1% of the cost. And then the other adjustment, larger adjustment we made was we decreased the local project funding set aside for 30 to 25%. And we did that for two reasons. One is that our costs increased on the larger regional projects, which through our polling were identified as those projects of greatest importance to potential voters. And thus we had to make a change. We also did an update of our revenue forecast, and that came down a little bit from about 1.36 to about 1.28 billion over 30 years for a half-cent measure. And then lastly, we now have the gas tax, and as we know, that has a great impact upon what we're trying to achieve with the outreach strategy and the potential for a future measure. But we thought it would be prudent, because there is a new funding source for maintenance, that it would be also prudent to reduce that set aside from 30 to 25%. We have gone over this change to the expenditure plan with the Technical Advisory Committee, and they, at their last meeting, voted to approve and support this. We've also discussed this with the city managers and also with the public works directors as well, and all support these changes made to this expenditure plan. So today we're recommending that you approve in concept this expenditure plan, again, to give us guidance through the outreach strategy until we get to a decision point in the spring of 2020 to put this on the ballot or not. With that, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments for Executive Director? I see none. Anyone in the audience want to make a comment on this item? Seeing none? Call the roll. So close.
Good morning. Mike Arabedian, Placer Group Sierra Club, and what can we say except here we go again. Pretty much the same list as you described it. 1.2 something billion, 28 billion now on this list of projects that the voters turned down. They did not vote to support this, a Measure M in 2016, in spite of about $1 million spent to pass it. Now, we will be working hard to try to change this and make the project list more accessible. Of course, one of our major efforts being to begin the process of getting rail and rail transit to Lincoln, tying it into the existing corridor, and various efforts to extend, for instance, the example of extending RT, to start these studies and try to get this going. This is, of course, based on a fallacy that expanding highway capacity is going to reduce congestion. Some of you have seen this handout. We will give it to those of you again and the other ones. This is the policy brief from the UC Davis Institute. Increasing highway capacity unlikely to relieve congestion. So I want to pass this out to the board.
Just give it to the clerk.
So we really think it's premature for you to oppose this. It will require review by the different cities and yourselves, and we hope you will have a real public input and consideration of the public so they all know what's going on. And
Thank you so much.
we're sorry to see it up again, but are there enough copies for everybody there?
Oh, yeah, we're good. Yeah. Yeah, we're all good.
Oh, here's a couple more. So we look forward to a different effort this time, that we have a more effect getting what the public really needs to deal with transportation here. Not to mention something like Highway 193, 192 that comes over here, it doesn't even have turnouts for much of us, a very unsafe highway. The legitimate points raised about safety concerns should be applied far more to these projects. So we hope you won't adopt this list. We oppose it. There are some factors in it, of course, that we do support, but the overall thrust of the highway capacity is a mistake and something that should not be a priority for this funding.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board on this comment, on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for action.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Transportation Funding Outreach Expenditure Plan. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The item is moved. We'll now move to item K, Highway 65 Widening Phase 1 Consultant Contract and Project Update.
Good morning, Chair Holmes, members of the board. We're going to be giving a presentation on the latest design plans for Phase 1 of the Highway 65 widening project. And I first want to introduce Chris Benson and Lauren Ranking. They're our project consultants from CH2M Jacobs, sitting right here. And I also want to recognize Rod Murphy, our Caltrans project manager, who's been key in moving the project forward. And he's right behind Chris and Lauren there. So the Highway 65 widening project includes improvements from Galleria Boulevard, Stanford Ranch Road, in the city of Roseville and the city of Rockland up to Lincoln Boulevard in the city of Lincoln. And the project improvements extend for approximately 6 miles. The state and federal environmental documents were certified in March of 2018. And what this project gets us is widening of Highway 65 to 6 lanes from Interstate 80 to Blue Oaks Boulevard, and then auxiliary lanes between interchanges from Blue Oaks up to Lincoln. And all of these improvements are currently included in the PCTPA Regional Transportation Plan and the SACOG Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Of course, the overall project is estimated to cost $60 million, so we're currently focused on Phase 1, which is southbound Highway 65 between Blue Oaks Boulevard and Galleria Boulevard. We've identified 4 key goals for the project based on input from our local agency partners and the PCTPA board. And the main focus of the project is to relieve existing traffic congestion and improve safety. The project is also key to providing additional roadway capacity for planned and anticipated growth in South Placer County. This is a photo looking south from the Sunset Boulevard interchange, and as others have mentioned this morning, traffic on southbound Highway 65 is continuing to get worse. It's currently backing up 3 miles in the morning, and we estimate that approximately 20% of traffic on southbound Highway 65 is diverting to local streets during the peak commute periods. We're going to be, the next couple slides, we're going to be walking through the design plans for Phase 1. Just to orient everyone, the blue line in the middle here is Highway 65 in the northbound and southbound directions. And to your left is where the project connects to the Interstate 80 State Route 65 interchange improvements. And to your right is the Blue Oaks Boulevard interchange and north towards Lincoln. Currently, Highway 65 is 2 lanes in the northbound direction and 2 lanes in the southbound direction between Galleria Boulevard and Blue Oaks Boulevard. There's also an auxiliary lane between the Pleasant Grove Boulevard interchange and the Blue Oaks Boulevard interchange in both the northbound and southbound direction. As part of the environmental work in 2017, we identified a streamlined project that would avoid environmental permitting and also avoid modifications to the ramps on southbound Highway 65. The concept looked at widening Highway 65 to add a third lane in the median between Blue Oaks Boulevard and Galleria Boulevard. Based on constructability meetings with Caltrans, it was determined that it was going to take significant drainage improvements. Also, a concrete median barrier was going to need to be constructed between Interstate 80 and Blue Oaks Boulevard, and we were going to have to build significant pavement on northbound Highway 65 that we weren't going to be able to use until future improvements. Given the increasing traffic congestion on Highway 65, the project development team, including local agencies, proposed to modify the Phase 1 design to include widening Highway 65 to the outside to add a third lane between Blue Oaks Boulevard and Galleria Boulevard, the addition of an auxiliary lane between Pleasant Grove Boulevard and Galleria Boulevard, and then also building the ultimate improvements for the southbound on and off ramps at Blue Oaks, Pleasant Grove, and Galleria interchanges. This slide shows the latest proposed design for Phase 1. These improvements address the highest traffic congestion in the corridor and also align with our plan to build improvements from south to north on Highway 65. Widening the outside will result in no throwaway costs, and it'll also accommodate future plans for carpool lanes or express lanes in the medians. Chris Benson from CH2M Jacobs is now going to walk through the proposed Phase 1 design in more detail and talk about next steps.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Luke, thanks for the opportunity and the board to provide some more details of this project. I'm going to start generally here from north to south and work through the different elements of the project. To orient just a tad here, the top half of the slide as we move through the corridor is going to be the west side of 65, so a lot of the development that's been going on with Topgolf and some of the hotels that are being built, that's kind of going to be on the north half of your slide. So starting here at Blue Oaks, the main improvements here at this interchange are going to be the on-ramp that you take if you're coming from, say, West Roseville to get onto southbound 65. That on-ramp will be widened one lane, so you'll have two what we call general purpose lanes, lanes that anybody can use to get onto the freeway, and then one carpool lane that you'll be able to use to bypass a metering signal that'll be placed at the end of the ramp. Moving a tad south here, this is the segment between Blue Oaks and Pleasant Grove. This section today is actually 3 lanes wide. The work that's going to be done between these two interchanges is going to be pretty minimal. It's going to be essentially a restriping effort. And that's where the third lane will start on this project, is right there at Blue Oaks in the southbound direction. So we have enough pavement. All we need to do is restripe it. And that third lane, like Luke said, will continue all the way down to I-80 at this point. Moving to the Pleasant Grove interchange, a fair amount of work to be done here. Starting kind of on the right side of the screen, we'll be reconstructing the off-ramp to Pleasant Grove. That's right there in front of the Walmart. Moving just a tad south, the loop on-ramp that you take if you're coming, say, from Rockland to get onto southbound 65. That loop on-ramp will be reconstructed. We will be constructing a retaining wall underneath the Pleasant Grove overcrossing. I'm going to come back to that retaining wall later in the presentation to talk a tad about that. Where that loop enters southbound 65, we are going to be introducing a 4th lane. And this is the auxiliary lane that Luke referred to a bit ago. We call them auxiliary lanes. I'm going to call it a 4th lane. I'll tell you where it's going to drop at Galleria here in a minute. The southbound slip on-ramp. This is the on-ramp that you would use if you're coming from West Roseville to get onto southbound 65. That ramp will be widened very similarly to the Blue Oaks on-ramp. 2 general purpose lanes that anybody can use, and then 1 bypass carpool lane that you'd be able to bypass the metering ramp there at that on-ramp. So this is the segment between Pleasant Grove and Galleria. And through this segment, it'll be 4 lanes. That outside lane is that auxiliary lane. The 3 inside lanes are the through lanes to I-80. One thing I wanted to point out in this slide is that brown coloring or hatching, that denotes the earthwork required for this project, the dirt we're going to need to move to be able to widen. And you can see it just barely stays inside the right-of-way. We don't anticipate any permanent right-of-way needs. Caltrans should not have to acquire any land for this project, so that's good news. Moving to the Galleria interchange, that auxiliary lane is just there on the right side of the screen. This is where that fourth lane will drop. You'll have to exit to Galleria. That Galleria off-ramp will be widened to 2 lanes. And then the third lane will intersect the existing third lane underneath that Stanford Ranch structure, the overcrossing. So where have we been and what have we been up to the last, say, 9 months? We've been working through a variety of preliminary design tasks, working really closely with Caltrans. We've developed, alongside Caltrans, we've developed the geometrics. We've reviewed how we're going to deal with drainage, how we're going to deal with stormwater. That gets a little complex in some spots. So we've been working closely with Caltrans on that. We've been working through the structural design of the retaining wall. Another item we worked on back in the fall was we actually conducted new traffic counts along the corridor. The traffic counts that we had were about a decade ago. They were a little old. And one of the reasons we wanted to do that was we wanted to gauge how much truck traffic was on 65. Truck traffic, the more truck traffic, the thicker pavement section, the more cost on the project. So we set up cameras, we literally set up cameras out on the corridor, and we count cars and we count trucks. And what we found was that the truck traffic has come down fairly significantly. There's not really a lot of truck traffic on 65. And so what that did was allowed us to shrink up the pavement section, which saved about $1 million in cost on the project. And we worked alongside Caltrans to determine that. So where are we in the overall design development process? In the fall, like I said, we worked through some geometrics with Caltrans. We actually then moved into 60% design and submitted that to Caltrans on February 22nd of this year, so about 2 months ago. Caltrans then reviewed the plans and has provided comments. We're in sort of that middle spring time right now. I'll get back to the aesthetics development here in a minute. And then where do we go from here? The next 9 months or so, working through final design. That's 90% and 100% design. Our plan is to have design complete by the end of the year. Some additional next steps, like I said, we're working closely with Caltrans to resolve some comments that they had, some technical comments. So I mentioned the retaining wall underneath the Pleasant Grove overcrossing. This project provides a good opportunity to develop an aesthetic concept for the corridor. So what will the retaining walls look like on the face? What will the sound walls look like on the face? That sort of stuff, the hardscapes on the project. And so this project's a good opportunity to figure out what that is, what that looks like. And so what we're planning on doing is sitting down with the stakeholders in the corridor, the local agencies, PCTPA and Caltrans, to figure out what that looks like. And so that's a process we're going to go through here over the next couple months. And we need to know that information now, so that first retaining wall along the corridor that you see starts that concept down up to Lincoln. So. Like I said earlier, moving towards final design, and then once that's done, we get to go out to bid and start construction. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back to Luke.
Any questions for Chris? I see none. Okay, thank you.
I do want to mention on the aesthetics development, we're also coordinating with the United Auburn Indian Community, and we've got some input from them also. And so we're looking at kind of a corridor-wide approach there. As Chris mentioned about moving towards construction, the total cost of these Phase 1 improvements is estimated at $21 million. So we're currently pending funding, but we are going to continue to pursue federal, state, and local funding opportunities to move forward with construction. The Phase 1 improvements, which you just saw, are going to address traffic congestion and improve safety in the corridor, but they do require additional design and regulatory agency permitting to be completed by our consultant. So requesting a board authorization to negotiate and sign a budget amendment in not to exceed $795,000 to complete the Phase 1 design. And the funding will come from regional transportation impact fees that will be considered by the SPARTA board later this morning. And we continue to provide the public updates on the project website at pctpa.net. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And of course, our consultant's available also to answer questions.
Okay, any questions for Luke? I see none. I'll open up public comment. Anyone from the public wish to address this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to board for action. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Highway 65 Phase 1 consultant contract. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. We'll now move to item L, Executive Director's Report.
Morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Just very briefly, have a very small report this morning. Last night, we had our first public meeting in regards to the Placer-Sacramento Gateway Plan, or the Corridor Mobility Plan, which is the first opportunity here to work together on a comprehensive approach with 14 jurisdictions to look at mobility on the corridor. We had a good turnout last night, and Fair and Peers, our consultant, along with AIM, their sub-consultant, did an overview of new emerging trends in transportation, and then got input from the public on items related to mobility in the corridor. Again, it's a multimodal approach, so it's not only roadways, but it's public transit, alternative modes, bike ped, and other modes to get people to think about the corridor differently. And this is an opportunity, again, as we've talked to you in the past, where we're not necessarily starting this process with artificial barriers and borders such as transit district boundaries and the like. We're trying to think a little bit outside the box and trying to actually think about where people are commuting, where they're going, in order to encourage different types of mobility in that corridor. And the objective of the plan really is also really to make us more competitive for these SB1 dollars, because as was mentioned by Luke in the prior presentation, until we have a funding strategy in place, we aren't very competitive for dollars. And so in this interim period, where there is a very small amount of money available under the gas tax under SB1 for congested corridors, we're up against some pretty steep competition with the other major metropolitan areas who have a much higher level of congestion than we do. And this corridor plan process is a way that we can work with our partners at SACOG and Caltrans and CCJPA to make our project, if you will, statewide, to create a group of projects that are of statewide importance that we can compete against those other areas. So this is an interim strategy, if you will, but a very important one, because it's probably one in our realm that it's probably going to be the best chance we have at funding things like the Capital Corridor Phase 2, which would increase train trips, from the 6 that we're hoping with the Phase 1 construction, which is already funded in final design, but really to increase those to 20 trips a day, which is roughly hourly service to Placer County, and really a game changer in terms of public transit and access to Placer County. So it is very, very important. So with that, I conclude my report, and be happy to answer any questions or receive any direction you have on other items. There is one other thing. We were we had kind of a first time opportunity. We were invited to participate in SACOG's strategic planning retreat process with some of the members of the board that are here today, but it's along with El Dorado Transit and our other transit, or El Dorado County Transportation Commission and other transit agencies. So it's just a thing I wanted to mention, because it shows that we are working very, very closely together with our partners in this region to try to improve mobility, improve transportation in this region. And we had a very, very productive meeting, I think, and really set the tone for what SACOG, in this case, is going to be doing over the next 12 months. So,
Alrighty.
thank you for your time.
Any comments, questions, board direction to staff or executive director? All right, I see none. Then we will, there's some informational items for you if you wish to view them. And we'll meet again on May 22nd, 2019 at 3 p.m.
Yes, sir. Just to point that out, we made an adjustment to our normal schedule to the afternoon after polling the members of the board because there's a very significant event in our South Placer County with Roseville 2019, and many of our members are going to that. So we made an adjustment with your blessing to our schedule, and so we're meeting in the afternoon at the next meeting. So.
Okay, very well. All righty, thank you. That concludes our meeting. We are adjourned.